Minus 30.
Status check.
Go Delta.
Go PSP.
And he goes, how you doing? I'm Tony Whalen. And he takes his hat off, and out comes this huge head of hair.
Minus 15.
Roll for ignition.
Hi, I'm Tony, and just wait for you to react.
10, 9,
Nine. This is your start.
8.
7.
Hi, I'm Tony.
6,
How do you feel about that?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Tony Whalen. How do you feel about that?
Liftoff.
25 seconds into flight. Chamber pressures continue to look good on all 3 boosters. Now 35 seconds in. Chamber pressure on the core booster is throttling down to the partial thrust mode. Response looks good. Now 50 seconds into flight. Strap-on boosters look good in the full thrust mode. Core booster looks good in the partial thrust mode.
Sometimes he would ask you things that you felt like, wait a minute, you're like not close enough to me to ask that question, but you felt compelled to answer, which is kind of an interesting quality to have. I mean,
For people who don't know Tony well, Jeff Goldblum. Watch Jeff Goldblum try to get through a conversation or a meeting, and it's Tony Whalen.
My 8-year-old now asks me a lot, but why, Daddy? But why, Daddy? And I say, you know what? That's the kind of question Tony always asks. He might ask you a question. He might inquire something of you, be it as the employee working down in the pub and was inquiring, but why do we do something a certain way?
Tony did a lot of things, too many things.
Tony has served as such a profound example of how to live in joy and connectedness and generosity.
It was always fun to go out and kind of just socialize with him no matter what, because you never knew what to expect.
Infuriating and yet endearing. He really wanted to push you and challenge you. He really wanted to push and challenge everyone around him, whether it was his peers, his friends, his teachers, his family. You know, he enjoyed pushing those buttons, not just to be incendiary, but to see where you would be on the other side of that.
He was always sick, you know. So I don't know if, I don't know how much anyone's talked about this, but like his chest, instead of being, you know, your ribs kind of go like this across your chest, they didn't go like that. They kind of went like this. So I remember when we were kids, I could put my fist in the hole of his chest because his ribs were kind of concave like that. And he had several surgeries. Actually, I was looking at a picture the day of when we were kids and we were at the beach, and I don't even know how old he was, but he already had the scar across his chest from when he had surgeries. I don't even know how old he was when he had his first one.
He was born with his chest sunken in, but the problem is you don't have much, there isn't much room in the chest cavity for the lungs and the heart. And whenever they would take an x-ray of him, his heart would be elongated and it looked different than everybody else's. But he had one surgery when he was 2, and then he had another one as an adult. And again, there was not enough room for him to breathe. He would have at times he would have trouble breathing because he just couldn't get enough air in.
They put a bar in to help his ribs as they were growing to kind of push them out. It worked somewhat, but like what would end up happening, and again, this was, well, I don't know, 77, 76. So it was like years ago. Like the bar, I remember as a kid, it would sometimes poke out on one, I remember poking on one side and then another time on the other side. It was crazy. So yeah, he had chest issues his whole life.
And I've always said to him, don't worry, I'll give you one of my lungs. You don't have to worry about that. But that was something that, you know, he lived with. And he wanted to do everything physical. And I would say, you don't have to do all the basketball games or all the whatever it is, but he wanted to do all the games and everything. He didn't want to be held back by his chest.
Tony was, with the crazy hair and glasses and, into comic books, and a kid that I guess that would be easily, picked on or whatever. But what I was funny is, and again, we're kids and we used to fight all the time. Like, again, probably more play wrestle fight and that kind of stuff. Tony could fight. And so we were kids, like people would pick on him, but Tony would always whip their ass because he was used to fighting me and this kind of stuff and wrestling with me. It's messed with him. No one ever messed with him twice. So
I was in here, I was setting the table, and I heard a lot of screaming and giggling, and I said, what the heck's going on? And I heard, let me down, and I went into the kitchen, and Tommy had picked up Tony, and he had him on his shoulders, and he was twirling him around the room. And I said, no, stop, you're gonna knock over the pots on the stove. And they were having a good time. Whenever they got together, they wrestled. Because Tommy was a wrestler, though Tony wasn't, but they always wrestled. They didn't drag you into it though, did they?
No. They were a little more physical than normal as adults.
And this was maybe 2018. It wasn't. We're not talking about a long time ago. They would do that kind of thing, but yet they always loved to hug and get their pictures taken together. I have so many pictures of them together, because I always said, "This is the only brother you're ever going to get."
Yeah.
it was December 18th, so it was Christmas time, and so I just here. So me and my brother were the Masons, and my dad was, the night he was in the Worshipful Master. This is the gavel that he had when he was the Worshipful Master. They checked. He had his swearing in ceremony, all that stuff, and they had a Christmas party. He had brought my mom, and my mom and dad at that point it was kind of a weird thing, but they were divorced. They got along better after they're divorced, believe it or not. So like he'd come over in the morning and kind of get us dressed for school and that kind of stuff. Anyway, but he wasn't living with us at that time. And it was probably about less than a year that they had been, maybe they were separated for 2 years, but maybe divorced a few months. And so he lived one town over in Highland Park, and we were in Edison. Again, they had the swearing-in ceremony. They had a big Christmas party at the lodge, and so my mom's like, "Well, I gotta go home. I gotta pick the kids up." And so she went and picked me and Tony up across the street where we were being babysat, and we went home. And my dad, like I said, had driven home. Had too much to drink, and he had ended up hitting a telephone pole that ended up falling onto the car and electrocuted the car.
Here I kind of came into a family that was already existing, but Tony was roughly about 5.5, 6 years old when, I came in, and it was important to be there for both of them. It was not easy. They both were very much missing their dad for many years. And it was tough having to, take them to summer camp and leave them.
Oh, that was bad.
And it was difficult, but they learned so much. And
Camp Mason.
I was just looking through papers on both Tommy and Tony sending me stuff, from camp, letters from camp and stuff. So it was,
Tony accepted Frank as his father. And there was he made you a hammer, or was that what it was, a hammer?
Yeah, there's a tool that he sent me for Christmas, and hammer that says, you've helped me all my life. It was, he was always giving back.
He was very lucky to go to Tenerife. He was going to school at St. Joe's, and this was his junior year. And so we weren't allowed to go with him or visit him until Easter. So he went in September, and I tell you, my telephone bills were crazy because I called him every week, and it was around, I guess, Christmas time when I found out that Tony wasn't going to school. And how I found that out was that the family that he was staying with, the boy was selling drugs. And Tony told me that on the phone. And I says, uh-oh, this is not going to work. So I called the president of the Rotary Club, and I said, you got to get him out of there. This is just not right. So the president had him live with him and his wife and the older children. And when Tony went back to school, he got beat up because he was a rat. He had told about the selling of the drugs. So what Tony decided to do was every day he would get dressed and go to school, but he really didn't go to school. He went to this bar where there were two ladies of the evening who taught him how to speak Spanish. And when we did see him in Easter, we were allowed to go see him at Easter, there he was with this long hair, earrings in his ear, dressed like I don't know what. And I says, what happened to you? He says, don't worry, Mom. I could speak fluent Spanish. Don't worry. So I took him right to the barber, got the earrings out, got him in some decent clothes, and I said, I think it's time we're going to go home. And he didn't want to, but when I got back I did have him come back with us. And when we went back to St. Joe's, I had him repeat the junior year because he didn't know. He didn't know anything. He didn't go to school. And he did very well. And years later, he said, it was a good thing that you had me repeat the junior year. He said, because it also made him more mature because he was more independent. And it was a good experience for him.
Well, we went to an all-boys Catholic prep school. So you can imagine that kind of molds and attracts a certain type of student. And, he definitely was not that. He stood out. And he was a new kid in class. He started a couple years after me. I don't know, this kid just struck up conversations with me, and he was always trying to be my friend. And I wasn't someone who had a lot of friends in high school. I was kind of a square peg in that place. And it just struck me as odd that anyone would want so much to be my friend. And I treated it with some suspicion at first. He, just in class, he would just strike up these really personal conversations with me. And I think, oh, okay. I thought he was weird. And I just wondered, what does he want? What does he want from me? And then it just started to dawn on me. He just wanted to know who I was. And which again was very weird for the place where we were, not many people at that school were interested in finding out who I was. So yeah, I treated that with suspicion at first, but slowly started to let him in, a little bit at a time. I was really struck by how open he was himself. He wanted to know about me. He wanted to know about my family. He wanted to know about my interests. People didn't ask me those questions. And it both frightened me and attracted me. And then the more and more he pushed, and I pushed him away initially. But he kept at it, and he really wanted to be my friend. So eventually I let him. And that was probably one of the best decisions of my life. What eventually became my core group of best friends in high school kind of came about by Tony collecting us. You know, he was a great collector of lost souls. And I think he noticed something in me that was like him. He's a brilliant fellow and definitely off kilter. And there was definitely something kind of off the beaten path about how I was in high school. I wasn't a typical all boys Catholic prep school kid, and neither was he. You know, our core group of friends were kind of weirdos. He saw something. I think he saw something in me and saw something in each of them that no one else ever really bothered to see or really looked for. You know, that's a time in everyone's life where they're, you know, still trying to fit a mold, and he was his own mold.
Tony and I met, I was 16, I think he was 18. It was a church retreat at my church, and I had a friend at my church who went to St. Joe's, and Tony went to St. Joe's in Metuchen as well. And he said, I'm going to bring some friends. And he brought Tony and Evan. I forget if Duvall was there. I don't remember. I think it was just Tony and Evan. And so I was one of the leaders of the retreat, and Tony and Evan were there a little bit early, and I was kind of walking around, and Tony he came in and he had this like fold up fabric frisbee. And so the guys were just playing frisbee, and, you know, I was playing frisbee with them. I can't play frisbee to save my life. I still can't. So yeah, I was playing frisbee with them, and yeah, we met on the church retreat. So, and I was doing a talk, like all the leaders of the retreat did a talk, and my talk was about my current boyfriend that I had for like 2 or 3 years. So one of the first thing you do on the retreat is some icebreaker for everybody to introduce themselves. So what we had planned for the opening icebreaker of that one was for everybody to go around the room, and we would pass a roll of toilet paper, and you would introduce yourself, and you had to take what we were telling people is that you had to take the amount of squares that you would need for the weekend, because this was all the toilet paper that was going to be available to you. So most people, you know, it was in front of everybody, and they're all teenagers, so they're all embarrassed to take toilet paper. So most people were taking 1 or 2 squares, which is a lie, because everyone knows you're going to need more than that. But Tony took like a lot, you know, because Tony needed a lot of toilet paper in life to start with. And then second, he just took a lot of toilet paper. So then it got back to the beginning, and then we said, okay, well, you have to tell for each square you have to tell something about yourself. So, you know, most people then only had to tell, you know, 1 or 2 things, but Tony had to tell, like, you know, a few arms worth of things about himself. And he told this very enthralling, engaging story about how he worked at Chicken Holiday, and he used to put the chickens onto the skewers and then into the rotisserie, and he would burn his arms. And somebody had come in that night, and they were arm wrestling across the counter. I don't even know why they were arm wrestling. I don't even know who came in anymore. All I know are those 2 things about, you know, hurting the arms at Chicken Holiday and that. But I know that everyone in that room was enthralled and knew exactly who Tony was after he finished that.
he encouraged us all to go to these poetry nights, these sort of poetry readings. And, and he was always going to read, even if he didn't have anything prepared, he would go up there and just free form. The stuff that would come out of his head would, even if it wasn't classically poetic, it would have the entire crowd just on the edge of their seats. He was so good at that. He was so good at just drawing the crowd to him, like a moth to the flame.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he kept the toilet paper. I don't even remember. It wouldn't surprise me if he kept the toilet paper as well. Yeah.
Betty wanted the boys to be within the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, I wasn't letting them go anywhere.
So she could be able to visit and see them. And Ryder was one of the schools that he had applied, and they gave him a very good scholarship.
I met Tony at Ryder University. Before I met Tony, I definitely saw him. I definitely saw this guy with crazy hair roller skating around the library, which I didn't think was appropriate. Okay. I didn't care about the hair so much, but definitely the roller skating in the library, not appropriate. So I kind of saw him there.
So I met Tony. It was September 1994. It was probably the first SGA meeting of the year. I was brought in as a senator for ACS, the Association of Commuting Students, and it was my freshman year. Tony was a year older, and I was coming out of dailies after the meeting, and this guy walks up to me. He's wearing a Yankees hat, and he goes, "How you doing? I'm Tony Whalen." I was like, "Hey, Tony Whalen. I'm Nick DeVito. Nice to meet you." And I go, "Oh, yeah, a nice hat, Yankees fan. Yeah, me too." And he takes his hat off, and out comes this huge head of hair. And I look at him, because I feel like he knew what he was doing, because he used his hair to his advantage. And I look at him, I go, "Are you serious with that hair?" And he's like, "What? What? Like he's playing like so. What's wrong with it?" I was like, "That's some head of hair, Tony Whalen."
Tony was like that character from Rushmore. He was a real-life Max Fisher, but better. He was a double major in political science and Spanish. He was in the baccalaureate honors program. He ran for freshman class president. He actually lost, but he wound up being vice president. He was president of Alpha Lambda Delta, the Freshman Honor Society. He was sophomore class president. He was on the President's Council. He wrote for the Ryder News and had at least one cartoon in it. He was in Model United Nations. He was Student Entertainment Council comedy chair. He was Pub Affairs Commissioner and a bartender. He was a resident advisor. He was Student Government Association president as a senior. He was homecoming king, of course, and he helped found our chapter of Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. I'm still probably missing something else he was involved in, but of all the things, the gazebo was very much Tony.
One student can make a difference. Tony Whalen rarely thinks in terms of can't, won't, or never. He's more apt to look at the impossible and think, why not? Why not build a gazebo near Centennial Lake? Why not petition the university for funding? Why not turn a dream into a reality? Why not indeed? The newest addition to the Ryder University campus, a beautiful wooden gazebo at the end of Centennial Lake, is there because of Whalen. He thought of the idea, he raised the money to have the gazebo built, he chose the design, and he cut the ribbon when the gazebo was officially opened.
At first, all my friends said, "Yeah, sure, Whalen, you'll get a gazebo built." I think people were actually amazed when it was put up, said Whalen, a junior from Edison, New Jersey. I just believe, why can't I do it? Why can't one student who really cares make a difference?
Whalen is proof that one student can. As a freshman, each day when he left Boyda Hall, he walked by the lake as he crossed campus, The site did not please him. In Whalen's opinion, what could be a place of beauty, a focal point for the campus, was little more than an afterthought. But unlike other students who might have shared the same feeling and not acted on it, Whalen decided to do something about it. Having seen a gazebo in another park, he thought it might be just the thing for Ryder.
Gazebo project, as we always called it. That was just something that he wanted something everyone, including students, could get involved with that would somehow enhance the campus.
So armed with little more than an idea, he solicited money from classmates, campus organizations, faculty, and staff. When that method raised barely $500, he went to the campus finance board, but his request was turned down. Undaunted, he sought assistance from the spending committee, which ultimately granted him $3,500.
First time I met him, interacted with him for sure. I was in dailies, walking around asking for donations for the gazebo, I think. So that was like the early phase, and I just kind of remember being like, dude, me and this guy have nothing in common. This guy's has no idea like where I'm coming from, because he's asking me for donations. I'm like, dude, I don't have money. I don't have 2 nickels to rub together. So you're not going to get any from me. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't quite recall, but he probably parlayed that into, oh, well, there's other ways that you can help, of which at the time I was like, nah. But then eventually when I did get, to know him more, what I found is if he knows you, and he's an enroller, he will enroll you.
And he was helping out with fundraising on the student end of things, but there were people in the certainly in the development office that were kind of helping out. So in that sense, he was really very early on. I saw him as someone who understood the value of partnering to get things done.
You used to call Tony Gazebo.
I did. And he responded to it. But I remember the day that he came in. Tony, every once in a while, my administrative assistant in the outer office would say, Tony's here. He just needs a minute. And he was good. He would come in and do a minute or two and do what he wanted to do. So this day he came in and he had that twinkle in the eye, that was Tony. And so I knew I was in some sort of trouble, he had something in mind. And he said he had this great idea. So we talked about it. And I had the feeling that he had, hammer and saw someplace out there, and he was ready to go start building this thing on the spot. And I said, well, Tony, a couple people you need to talk to. We can't just have people running around building things on campus, So very quickly he was back in, and he had talked to all the people, and everything was ready to go. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not sure what good this thing is going to do, but no harm, so it got built. And I was really pleased. I mean, it became, a place where students hung out between classes and that kind of stuff. But we also had, so many times in the spring and the fall, weddings in the chapel, and people would run out there and get their pictures. I just wonder how many, wedding pictures there are from that gazebo scattered around over the years.
I came to college with the attitude that this is where it will all begin, he said. The past 18 years were fun, but this is where I put all of that learning to use. I chose Ryder because I didn't want to be a little fish in an ocean. I wanted to be a prominent, multicolored fish in a pond. I care about this school. I want other students to be able to say, I go to Ryder with pride, like I do.
And now, each day when he walks by the lake, instead of feeling frustration, it's that pride that bubbles up inside of Whalen.
What was your reaction when you heard about the fraternity idea?
Wow. It wasn't crazy. There was a void back then, I think, at Ryder. I think there's still a void in Greek life in general. What struck me, though, and this speaks to Tony, is the world of people that it encompassed. Even though that, we're not completely on the same page with everything we do, but these core principles were really important to us. And we believe in this concept of fraternity. it's not dead like a lot of people wanted to say, this idea. And that's what shocked me. And like I said, again, I think that speaks volumes to the man, Tony, that he was one of the folks who put his name to it. And I think, and maybe that was it. People like Tony who put their name to it, that folks said, yeah, you know what, I like that guy. And if he's for this, I like what he stands for, then maybe I can get behind this too.
I thought it was a great idea. I was never like a huge fraternity person. You know, I hung out at the fraternities on campus and got a bid to one or two of them and wasn't interested. And but when I heard about SIGEP and, you know, the Balanced Man Project, it was something I was very interested in, but it was, again, it went back to like, I don't want to be a joiner. I don't want to be in a fraternity. But then realizing like, well, most of it is my friends who are doing it, or people I know and respect, and it wasn't like the traditional fraternity that was at Rider at the time. And I thought, well, this is something I think Tony would be interested in. The Balanced Man Project really, I think, was a big thing for Tony, and I think a big thing for everybody that joined. I mean, you know, it's who we were.
You know, there was some times that I felt he was very misunderstood, okay, from afar. Where I felt where he was misunderstood, I remember he put in an application. I was in a club, right, and he put an application in, and part of the application, I'll never forget this, part of the application is like, put in a motto that really tells you about yourself. And he put in Peter Parker's principle, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And then I wrote, you know, he wrote Stanley, right? And people are reading that and they're like, what the hell is this? You know? And I said, well, yeah, Stanley, with great power comes great responsibility, you know, it's from Spider-Man, Stanley. You know, there's genius behind, you know, some of our best comic books. And they're like, comic books? Like, this guy's putting stuff from comic books? I'm like, yeah, but it's bigger than that. You know, let's read it. And they kind of wrote him off. They kind of wrote him off like that. They're like, is this the guy in the library with the roller skates? I'm like, yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, I know I said the same thing. But you know, this is a great motto. They're like, no, it isn't. It's from a comic book. I said, all right. I lost this argument, by the way. But, and I was, you know, I look back and I should have fought harder, which is another thing I got, you know, I'm still reminded, you know, in very current things that I'm doing at my job and back then, just to be relentless. When we're coming up with the brotherhood, and it goes into the servant leader, right? So that foundation with great responsibility, right? Those who have more are asked of to do more, okay? And then the servant leader, which is directly from the Balanced Man Project. So when we heard those words together, not even knowing, right? Everything clicked. Everything clicked.
Greek life at Rider has drifted in the way, not of anybody else, but in the way of Sigma Phi Epsilon. And it's funny, when I first got here to Jefferson, there was talk about SIGEP coming here. And it was talking with the at that time, it was Philadelphia University, the dean of students, now part of us, of course, Henry Humphreys. And Henry and I were talking, oh, so you helped with SIGEP at Rider? Yeah, we were early on in the Balanced Man Project. And he said, yeah, that changed Greek life. So not only are we talking about changing Greek life at Rider, Tony was part back then, because it was still new back then, as you know, but he was part of it, of this shift of Greek life in general.
You know, the one thing that I ever did, I think that I could say I did before Tony, was I joined the fraternity before him. Everything else, I followed after him. Tony, like the impact is just it's one huge butterfly effect.
He exemplified the spirit of the Rider University student leader on campus with his many leadership roles, and also by maintaining a strong connection to the Rider community as an alumnus. As the founding father of Sigma Phi Epsilon and the former president of the Student Government Association, Tony was committed to the cause of campus beautification and led the campaign which really raised funds for the gazebo by Centennial Lake. And my heartfelt condolences go out to the Whalen family.
Tony was one of those rare people who just sticks out as somebody extraordinary. When I think about Tony that way, what really gets to me is the care and devotion he had for other people, far above and beyond.
My brain goes in so many different directions about, all of these different things that he's done for me and looked out for me and, made sure that I was okay. And, seeing things in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. He was there, during one of the lowest points of my life, when, my marriage ended, and he just talking me through things and just non-judgmental and just making sure that I was okay, just reassuring me, boosting my confidence, and just making sure that, everything that I've accomplished in life, that I didn't throw it away or I didn't let it falter or sway or anything like that.
Part of the crowd, but stood out. About 3 years ago, my then long time girlfriend partner, Linda, and I broke up. And Tony called me just out of the blue. I think that's what happened. He said, "Why don't I come over?" And he did. He came over to my house and raised my spirits, because one thing about Tony, whenever you were with Tony, you got buoyed up. There's something so remarkable about him. And I've often thought of all the students I had at Rider in the thousands, he stands out. He stands out for what he was, because it's a rare thing to be so good for other people, not like a saint, but like a guy simply responsible. And again, if the world were only made up of more Tonys, what an incredibly better place it would be.
I think his time as SGA president, and I think he set up for student governance at Rider respect that student government enjoyed through my time at Rider, which I was there for 20 years. I think it really can point back to Tony, and that's just not hyperbole. And I think that's because he asked good questions. He expected the folks who worked with him in governance to ask those questions. He wanted people to be good thinkers, and he taught that, I think. And I think that became an expectation as it was passed down. I'm not saying it was passed down perfectly from year to year to year, but I can really say in the 20 years that I was at Rider, that was in the background playing as an expectation for student government officials. I think a lot of people will point to that one side of Tony, the jokester, the kidder, great guy having around with fun and stuff, but and that was great. And I think that made him the desirable person to be around and to be followed. And so, yeah, I'm not discounting any of that. But I think it's really, I want to make sure folks know about that, the substance that was there, and the substance that remains, because that's what he really passed on.
My senior year, I was the president of Rider University Lawrenceville campus. At the time, there still was 2 different SGA presidents for the multiple campuses that Rider had at the time. Prior to that, my junior year, I was the SGA secretary, again at Lawrenceville campus, of course. And I was able to achieve those opportunities in large part because of my involvement in SIGEP. I have to say, unfortunately, I can't remember the first time that I met Tony, but I definitely it's like I feel him right now. I feel the feeling that I had when I met Tony eventually, which was very empowered. Like, oh yeah, we got this. Like, you're a SIGEP. Yeah, you run for things. You know what I mean? You put yourself out there and be a nice guy and do the right thing and work hard and be who you need to be. And the rest will usually follow in line.
I guess in that moment in college, the impact he had on me at that moment was kind of like, wow, you can do this other stuff. Because I hadn't thought to run for student government or do any of that. I always have funny memories of him. Like when I think about him, it's like I'm thinking of laughter. You know, that I have moments in college that when I think about it are sad or depressing or whatever. But that never with him. Like it's always these moments of levity.
The first person I met at Rider when I was going to my freshman orientation was Tony Whalen. He gave me my ID badge for orientation. And from that moment on, he kind of controlled my destiny. And he told me what the plan for me was, whether I agreed with it or not. And that was it. So it was kind of his way. When he met people, he had a plan for them. And, you know, he was so persistent and tenacious to make sure you follow the plan. He got me involved in SIGEP. He got me involved in SGA. He got me involved in a lot of things. He told me when I was going to run for SGA president or treasurer. He told me when I was going to what organizations. He brought me to Model United Nations, which was a huge impact on my college life. He was my big brother in SIGEP.
When I was graduating college, I knew I wanted to do something in IT, but I had like no idea what I wanted to do. I ended up talking to Tony. So 6 months out of graduating college, I'm like, hey, I'm not working and I'm sitting on my parents' couch and they're yelling at me and I don't know what to do. And I was talking to Steve, I was talking to Tony, and Tony's like, why don't you come work for me? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, do you have a job? I'm like, I started interviewing him back. I'm like, hey, what do you want me to do? Like, what's the career advancement opportunity? He's like, dude, shut up. He's like, I've got a job. You have no job. Come work for me. And you're an outgoing person. You know, I'm running a service desk. Come work for me. You can take calls. You can learn IT. You can figure out what you want to do. And it was amazing. I've actually built a career out of managing service desks and really just started that way.
Shortly after Rider, I landed. I didn't know what I want to do, and I'm still figuring that out. But I was at a trade publication for the construction industry in a while, and then Tony had landed a job for some outfit called IHS, and they had help desks at various locations. I think he was at J&J, and he's like, hey, by the way, they have a help desk at Prudential, and why don't you go ahead and do that? And I'm like, sure. Are you good with computers? I'm like, I'm okay. You know, I study up here, and you know, I'll get you in contact with these people. And I was like, okay, are you sure? So I was like, yeah. So I took the bait, and it turned out great. You know, I was able to land a job there, got a good interview, and then I became, ended up leaving that outfit and became like a full-fledged, you know, Prudential employee. And I've been there ever since and been able to work my way up. And he's always been a mentor to me because we're in the same field, you know, IT operations. And, you know, he was always someone I relied on and depended on for advice.
I met Tony. I was interning at Sanofi back in summer of 2016, going into my senior year of college at Rutgers, New Brunswick. So I was in a completely different realm from Tony, working with a completely different team, but they had actually just started a program, the ITS Rotational Development Program at Sanofi, which was geared towards new college grads and trying to get them into the IT department at Sanofi. So they had just introduced a new hire, and I started seeing her around, and she was always with Tony. Her name was Veronica. So the one day we're in the bath, like her and I are in the bathroom at the same time, and we introduce ourselves, and she's like, come on, like, I need you to meet, she's like, I need you to meet Tony. Like, he's not my manager, but like, he's one of the leads for this rotational program, and he's really great. You should meet him. He'd love to meet you. I was like, okay, great. I think I spent literally every day the remainder of my internship either in Tony's office, getting lunch with them, literally just welcomed me with open arms. I eventually ended up getting hired into the rotational development program. Was more than a coworker. You know, he really became a very good friend. Like he felt, you know, he was really honestly like my best friend, especially in those early years of, you know, me navigating the workplace. And again, like he was more than just a mentor. And I think a lot of people felt the same. It like set the stage for me, like going forward. Like for him, it was always, you know, like, you know, the sky's the limit. You know, we would talk about things. He'd be like, well, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, Amanda, you gotta know. Like, he's like, what's your elevator pitch? Like all these things. We'd be walking. Like I remember the one time we had a town hall and the CIO was there and he's like, go make sure you go say hi to him. And I was like, he doesn't care about me. He was like, it doesn't matter. He's like, get visibility, networking. I was like, okay.
So I met Tony when I became an IDS RDP intern at Santa Fe back in, gosh, I want to say it was 2017. Definitely the main thing or the biggest lesson that I always think of with Tony is to go into every situation as best you can, just being yourself, no matter how scared or nervous you are, because people will love you for being yourself. Because Tony was always himself and everyone loved him, no matter if he was, you know, saying the things that no one else wanted to say in a meeting or walking into a room and being that friendly face to someone who is no one to talk to. Like, I think it's so important to just like go into every situation that you can with a smile and also just be confident in who you are. You know, we all have different quirky traits about ourselves and some people may not like them, but at the end of the day, you should always stay true to yourself. And I feel like he always did that and always loved when people did that for themselves too, when they were completely themselves and weren't faking anything or trying to be a certain way. You know what? Another thing, like quotes about like leadership or just like quotes that, you know, about empowering people always remind me of him, because when I was an intern, he made me do this thing where we had a giant whiteboard when you walked into like the floor that everyone in IT was on at Santa Fe, or most people were on that floor. And every day he like assigned me as an intern, one of my like little tasks to do was to put an inspiring quote on that whiteboard. So when people walked into the floor, it was the 4th floor of building C, or no, building D, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they saw a quote, and that was like one of my little things I did. He was like, no, we have to do this. Like everyone will see a quote every morning they come in. It'll really like boost morale. So I feel like when I see certain quotes, I definitely like Tony would like that one.
Tony paid for my dues one semester as an undergraduate. Tony paid for my Ruck Leadership Institute. It's an undergraduate leadership program in Virginia. Tony always bought hotel rooms because we had to go to these regional conferences. And he knew I've just had 2 kids. My son was premature and had some medical issues. My wife didn't work for a year. He knew that we were pinching pennies. And he said, listen, I'm going anyway. I got the room. Come on, stay. The generosity with him in his, not just his finances, but his time, his caring, his loving was just never ending. And I don't want to say he held reservations on it, but he said, I'll pay for you to go to this leadership training, but you better use it. You better be the best that you could be out of it, that you had to train others, you had to teach others. He encouraged me to join the ABC when I graduated. He encouraged me every step of the way when I became chapter counselor 7 or 8 years ago, which was great because within 2 years, he had been elected as the ABC president, and there was no better person to do it because the chapter needed someone that everyone loved and would be united behind that one figure. And that was Tony.
So Tony never really saw anything that would divide people. He saw what brought people together. He saw things in us that we didn't see in ourselves. We saw us for who we thought we were. He saw us for who we could be. One of the most important things I can say that he left us with was leadership, knowing what that is. I remember back at Ryder, in our emerging leaders group, we would hear, if you think you're a leader, who is following you? And I think we can all say that Tony definitely had a large group of people following him.
Like for all the stuff that Tony did in terms of trying to help people find their way and he always wanted me to be less pessimistic. Tony was a big part of that, and part of me becoming who I was supposed to be and becoming less pessimistic about life.
We learned about the founders, and it was really interesting to us, and it gave us, some of us, including me, a real big sense of belonging. And I graduated at the height of the last recession, and it took me a while to actually get a job that was something I could live on, and that job was as an underpaid intern at Sanofi, working for Atul and Tony, and working with Levi and Chris. I have, from 5 or 6 years ago, a bi-weekly friendly lunch meeting with Atul, Tony, Chris, and Levi. And I'm the only one left at Sanofi right now, and I'm never turning that off.
You know what? Tony knew a lot from Pat. I would have a lot of parties, and he had been to some of them, and that's how I was introduced to the AVC. He had asked me to come on and help with social media and with event planning. I helped out with the 15th year anniversary banquet, and that's how our party planning relationship started together, and that was a lot of fun. We've done, events since then, and we'll definitely miss him, and he was such a great part of AVC and introduced me to it. And 5 years later, here we are. I'm still doing it, and it's a lot of fun. I'm really happy that he did introduce me to that.
His legacy, his capacity to transform other people's lives, and he's done that. And for me, on a less profound level, he was just a lot of fun to have as a student. Playfulness is a gift. We live inside a box often of routine and shoulds and don'ts. And he seemed to be free of those.
What was your favorite thing to do with your dad?
Play Lego Harry Potter video games with him. Okay, so have you watched Harry Potter? You know the one scene where Ron gets starts puking up slugs?
Yes.
You can get that spell. You can get that spell. It doesn't hurt the other player. You just hit them with it. And they either start puking slugs or just random things happen to them. Like his head could just go ginormous. And he would have to play like that until the spell worn off. And so we would just do random things to each other the whole time.
And it's something I cannot get over because he occupies too much of this earth, too much of the soul of this earth to be gone. It's impossible. There's an injustice of monumental proportion and no one to appeal to. But to say that we have the memory, and it's a cherished memory.
I have so many memories, and sometimes I think about, wow, how would my life have been so much different without Tony in my life? And it really would have been, right? I feel like my life was better for knowing Tony, and he'll always be part of me. He'll always be my best friend, and never stop loving him. He'll always be my best friend.
I think he wanted to, leave good in the world and leave the world better than where he started with it. So
you know, that with great power comes great responsibility, you know, make things for, you know, make change for the better. And I think that was part of his thing, is that it doesn't matter who you are, what you came from, what's going on in your body or anything like that. You can kind of do anything, and you can touch anyone, and he did. And yeah, so I don't think there is something where you can say that he has a legacy that is X, because for every single person who he knew, it was different, and that in itself is the legacy that he'll live on through everyone's hearts.
My grandmother and my grandfather had divorced a long time ago. Me and Tony were, I don't even know if Tony was born. I was a baby. And so while my mom would see my grandfather, he moved down to Florida. We just grew up with my grandma, you know, and again, my grandmother didn't like my grandfather. So we just knew him growing up as Bad Pete, you know, that's how we knew him. That was his name. Okay.
Is this your mother's?
My mom's dad, yeah.
Okay.
So now she would see him every once in a while, you know, but never with us. And so one summer we went down there, you know, and my grandfather was, you know, as you know, as Toy looks like my dad, I look like my grandfather. But he was like, you know, just really old school Italian, real kind of, you know, wasn't a bad guy, but like just really old school kind of guy, like, you know, children should be, you know, seen and not heard kind of thing, and all that, like really old school. Nice guy, and he loved me and my brother and that kind of stuff. But he was really, there's rules and all this stuff. Now we didn't know any of this because we didn't know him. You know, we figured it out pretty quick because we didn't really have a relationship with him until I was in high school. Tony had to be in middle school, so maybe I was like maybe a freshman or a sophomore in high school, maybe 8th grade, and I was either 8th grade, 9th grade, somewhere in that ballpark. Tony was well, maybe like 6th grade or 5th grade or something. So anyway, so we went to Disney World, and you know, me and him. I remember like me, him, my grandmother, we did our thing, and then my mom went to like Epcot or something. My grandfather was just coming in just to have dinner with us. So we all went out to dinner at. I wrote it. I Googled it so I could get the name of it. I always take a picture of it when we go. It's called it's called Liberty Tree Tavern. Okay.
Okay.
Liberty Tree Tavern, and it's right there in the Magic Kingdom. This is like, it's right there in like, you know, in the front there in Main Street USA or whatever. And it's a sit-down waitress service type place. And this is in the summertime, and so it was absolutely packed. Okay. And it was like, I remember going there. I remember actually, I think this was years ago, and I remember just sitting there and being so hot and sweaty because you're in the lobby and you're waiting, and we waited. Gosh, we had to wait at least an hour for our table. It was so packed. And what they do for dinner is they do this thing called Thanksgiving dinner. So you sit down and it's all you know, table service and that kind of thing, and it's family style. So we're sitting there and we're eating, and I remember Tony was just like, we were out all day, and it was, I don't know, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. We just been waiting for an hour, you know, hour and a half. And my mom was like, hey, you know, eat your, I think it was carrots. And in Tony's offense, the carrots weren't very. I remember there being like carrots in like a kind of like a maple sauce of something, or I don't know, some kind of sauce. It wasn't very good. He's like, I'm not going to eat them. Now again, you understand my grandfather's old school, all this stuff. And we never really knew him that well. So he said to my mom, and he said, I'm not eating it. And I was like, eat your carrots. And I think part of it because she didn't want to be embarrassed, you know, and their dad and all this stuff. And she's like, eat your carrot. He goes, listen, if I eat it, I'm going to throw up. And she's like, eat your carrots. I'm really getting upset. And I was just sitting there, whatever. I'm just keeping my head down eating. And so he's like, fine, whatever. And he starts eating it. Well, next thing you know, he throws up on the table. Okay. Like on the table, like just all over. Now, again, it's family style, right? So it's all over everything. And it wasn't like a little bit either. It was a ton. So what do I do like anyone else? I just start laughing. I'm laughing. I think it's so funny. Now people now noticing, because again, it's packed because our tables are so close. People are like, oh my God, I can't. So people start getting up and I am laughing. And so my grandfather's super upset. He's like, don't just sit there and laugh. Take him in the bathroom. I'm like, all right, all right. So I go up to the bathroom, right? So, and this particular place, my brother's like, I got puke all over him. We have to walk through a very crowded like lobby, right? Then up the stairs, the bathroom's upstairs, God forbid. And then we go into the bathroom. Now again, this is Disney World, you know, in the summer, and it's packed. And we go in the bathroom is just like you can't even like there's people waiting in lines for the urinals, the sinks, everything. You can't even get in. So Tony's like, oh my God. And I look like, I said, I don't know what we're gonna do. Tony goes like this, holds his mouth like this, and he runs into the bathroom and he takes his hand and he throws up. And when he throws up, he goes like this. He turns his head and the throw up just sprays the whole room, sprays the whole bathroom. And then he just sees what he did and just starts laughing. And the Tony like, ah! And so I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And everyone's like, oh my God, I can't. People are freaking out. He puked on everybody. I'm standing at the door like, oh my God. So the door closes, Tony's in there. My mom comes running. I was like, what's going on? So Tony's like, my mom goes in, grabs Tony, takes him into the women's room, okay? And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm standing in the hallway. I'm like, and people are walking out like, I can't believe this. And so I like kind of go around like the corner a little bit to kind of hide a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on here. So I like go around the corner a little bit to how to hide. I'm like, I can't believe this. I'm like, I can't believe this has happened. So I'm like, I wait maybe about 5-10 minutes, whatever, or maybe not 10, but maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm like, I got to see what happened here. So I go in and the place is like empty, but there's this guy and his kid, like, you know, maybe the kid's like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or something. And he's kind of like wiping his kid off. And so I play it off because I guess he didn't recognize me. So I'm like, oh my God, what happened in here? And the guy, he was from England. And he's like, well, some kid came in here, threw up, and then burst into laughter. And the kid was like, Dad, there's still some on my leg. And he's like, I'm wiping this kid off.
Oh my God.
My grandfather didn't talk to us for like 3 days.
Hi, brothers. It's Steve Lucarelli. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a very long time. As you may know, Tony Whalen loved comic books and superheroes. And one of the things that Stephanie Goldstone, myself, and quite a few people were thinking of doing was to immortalize Tony in a comic book. And we have a wonderful artist named Ian Dorian who has done work for Sony, Marvel, DC, 20th Century Fox, Disney Plus, Valiant, just to name a few. And he is going to make an amazing story that I have had the honor of co-creating and co-writing with him. There is a GoFundMe page that we're going to need your help on, and to really make this into a wonderful gift for Tony's family and to really immortalize him. So Stephanie has a donation box, and there's also a place on GoFundMe that you can go and donate. All you have to do is type The Founders Comic Book Project for Tony Whalen, because that is the name of the comic, The Founders. And there's also a place on Facebook, if you just put in hashtag Tony Whalen, the Whalen family, it shall come right up, and then you can make your donation there. And I also have a QR code that I was able to give some of the brothers that are working on this. So if you have any questions, you can field it to them. Other than that, I hope you're all doing well. I look forward to making this into an awesome comic, into an awesome gift for Tony Whalen's family. And I really think that he'd be proud of us into making this into something that I know he would really love. Hope you're all well. Take care.